ture Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha Om Tare ture Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha Om Tare ture Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha.
Hello, and a very warm welcome, everyone. At Tara Mandala, we are committed to being a welcoming, open, and safe community for practitioners and students of every culture, religion, gender, sexuality, age, ability, and circumstance. I'm Dr. Jean Carroll, and it is my great pleasure to be hosting you today for a very special edition of Lama Live. It's Mother's Day here in England, and so it feels fitting to be connecting with the global Sangha, and we are very lucky to have Dr. Amelia Hall, who is here to speak on the subject of Buddhist spiritual care. Some of you will know her from the year-long Heart of Buddhism online program, currently underway. Dr. Hall is also an Associate Professor of Buddhism and Department Chair in the Wisdom Traditions Department at Naropa University, where she teaches within the Master of Divinity program and trains people to apply Buddhist teachings to pastoral care. This session will offer a glimpse into Tara Mandala's upcoming Chaplaincy and Spiritual Care program, currently in development, exploring the ways that Buddhist wisdom can support caregiving, life transitions, and end-of-life journeys. Dr. Hall is passionate about this important subject, and we are delighted to have her here to share with us today. Over to you, Dr. Hall.
Thank you, Dr. Jean. I appreciate the introduction. And please forgive me, I'm getting over a cold, so I may have to stop and drink my hot lemon and ginger tea, and maybe cough. But I'm so delighted to be invited to Lama Live. Some of you, if you've been taking the Heart of Buddhism course, myself and Lama Sultram, and also Wendy Garling has also been a guest speaker in that program, and it's been just really wonderful. I want to also just take a moment to wish a happy Mother's Day to all of those who are celebrating Mother's Day, to all of those who are mothers, to all of those who mother. Thank you for everything. And we'll begin. I think, one of the things that I want to do in the time that we have this morning, it's morning here, is I'm going to give a kind of a sample of the kinds of training, an embodied sort of training that you might experience or go through if you're training to be a chaplain or a Buddhist spiritual caregiver. So that's what I'm going to do today, and we'll do a little bit of practice. But before we start, I'd love to know if you can pop in the chat and just see who's out there and where you're all from. I'm seeing someone from Tucson. It's really nice for us to know where you are in the world and who's out there. It's good for me because then I can actually feel like I'm speaking to people in person, even though we're online. So if you don't mind, we'll just take a minute or two and just pop in the chat. You see Ohio, Florida, Northern California, Southern Germany. So I'll just wait and see a little bit. Lake Tahoe. Nice. It's amazing that we can just all be here. Oh, North Shore of Long Island. Okay. I grew up there, partly. Western Massachusetts, Mount Shasta, Rochester, Czech Republic, Guatemala. How cool. All right, I'll just wait for a couple more to come in. Lincoln, Massachusetts. Nice. Okay, so what we're going to do, and I think if you've been to Lama Live before, you're used to this, is that we're going to raise bodhicitta. So we're going to, especially with the topic that I'm going to talk about today, it's really important, but always important. And this is, it creates a kind of vastness and import to activity, so that it's not just about us, but it's really about the suffering of all beings. So if we could bring up, thank you, the slide. So just take a moment to connect with your heart and your mind. In this tradition, the heart and the mind are not separate things. This word chitta I always like to think of as heart mind. It can sometimes be translated as consciousness. And Bodhi is awakening. So it is the awakening of the heart mind, the aspiration to benefit all beings. And so these are words. It's important to say the words, but it's really it's the feeling behind the words. It's really that genuine feeling of your heart opening. So feel your heart opening a little bit. Let it expand and generate this awakened heart mind. Knowing the heart essence of my being and that of all beings, to be primordially awake and manifesting as ceaseless compassion. I cultivate the intention to practice in order to single-handedly place all beings, my parents, in the state of the Great Mother. Okay, thank you. So, I really want to thank you again for joining me. And what I'm going to discuss today is an example of the kind of training that one receives as someone who is training to be a Buddhist chaplain or a Buddhist spiritual caregiver. So you'll hear those two terms are kind of interchangeable, chaplain and spiritual caregiver. So the kinds of grounding that a person who's doing this kind of training needs isn't simply an intellectual understanding of the Buddhist tradition, but also a real kind of embodiment. And I'd say, of course, as a practitioner, that's incredibly important too, but it's even more so when you're providing spiritual care. And there's a lot of work that has to happen for oneself in that training before one's able to extend that to others. So what I'm going to do today is give you a sample of what that training might look like and what kinds of things does a Buddhist chaplain actually need to know, to draw upon. One of the things that they need to do is to be able to draw upon the tradition and different aspects and different streams of the tradition. What I'm going to draw upon today is from the Indo-Tibetan Buddhist tradition and a classic of Mahayana Buddhism, which is called the Bodhicaryavatara. You may know it as the Way of the Bodhisattva, which is a text that was attributed to a Buddhist called Shantideva. So I know some of you will probably know a lot about this, but I'm just assuming that there may be people here where I'm introducing things. So if you're an expert in this, please understand that I'm presenting this from a very beginner's perspective. So this is an example of a teaching and a text that every Buddhist chaplain should really be able to know, to draw from, to have in their wheelhouse. And it's a very, very, it's just an incredibly beautiful, helpful, classic text in Buddhism on the path of Bodhisattva. So it has a profound relevance to Buddhist chaplaincy. It's attributed, as I said, to Shantideva, an 8th century scholar at the Indian Buddhist University of Nalanda. It's a classic of world religious literature. And what makes this text particularly valuable for chaplains is its emphasis on the cultivation of compassion and wisdom in service to others. So it isn't merely a philosophical treatise, it's a practical guide to developing the qualities that allow us to be fully present with those who suffer. Now, the name Shantideva itself means God of Peace, which seems fitting for a text that has guided countless practitioners in their journey with compassionate service on the path of the Bodhisattva. So what we're going to do for the next hour is explore how this wisdom can inform chaplaincy practice or spiritual caregiving. So as I've said, this text is a classic of Indian Mahayana Buddhism. And at the core of Mahayana Buddhism are some pretty essential pieces. 2 essential things are compassion and wisdom. And these are often personified by the Bodhisattvas of Avalokiteshvara, who embodies infinite compassion, and Manjushri, who represents wisdom. So we have these 2 very important pieces in the Mahayana path. Obviously, the path of aspiration to awaken and the action, applied action to awaken. But compassion and wisdom, and chaplains are called to cultivate both. Compassion without wisdom can lead to burnout or misguided efforts or mistakes. Wisdom without compassion can be detached and unhelpful. So it's the integration of these qualities is what makes really effective spiritual care possible. Now, central to this path also is bodhicitta, the awakened heart-mind. And it has 2 aspects: intention, the aspiration, and practical engagement, the application. The aspiration to go and the going itself. So, as most of us, we begin with the aspiration, the sincere wish to alleviate suffering, and gradually develop the capacity to embody this aspiration in action. So this text, the Bodhisattva path, the Bodhicaryavatara, it includes verses that are used in the Bodhisattva vow. So if you have taken refuge and then you decide that you want to take the Bodhisattva vow, quite often the Bodhisattva vow is taken from a chapter in this text, the Bodhicaryavatara, the path of the Bodhisattva. And the Bodhisattva vow is really profound. It's a vow to aspire to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And one's enlightenment can really only be complete when all other sentient beings attain enlightenment. And so this reflects a recognition of our fundamental interconnectedness. Your suffering and my suffering are not separate phenomena. And so this brings us to a critical concept of shunyata, or emptiness. Because when you're able to stop differentiating yourself and others while helping them, this means that you have realized the emptiness of self. So when we, as chaplains, let's say, when chaplains serve others without reinforcing a sense of separation, as in, I am the helper and you are the helped, then that service becomes spiritual practice and social engagement simultaneously. So I want to talk a little bit about this text in and of itself. What is this, the path of the Bodhisattva? So I want to do a little bit of an introduction and give you a sense of how this would be taught in a Buddhist chaplaincy program, because this is different than, say, a Lama giving an explanation or giving a Dharma teaching. There's a quality of Dharma teaching here, but in the actual training, spiritual care training, it's also relating this to how would this actually be applied and embodied in spiritual care. So Shantideva, I love the story of Shantideva, and the sort of the backstory of this text, particularly for those of us who sometimes doubt our capacity or qualifications. According to the traditional story, he was a student at Nalanda University in India. He wasn't considered an exemplary student. His classmates, there was all these stories, his classmate joked that his great realizations were limited to eating and sleeping. He frequently missed classes, appeared disengaged. And in fact, the story goes that the Bodhicaryavatara came to be when his classmates set him up to deliver a lecture to the entire university. So there was some sort of annual lecture that was supposedly given by one of the most talented people in the university. And so it's said that either as a prank or to embarrass him, he was set up to deliver the lecture. But either way, when the moment came, it's said that Shantideva delivered the Bodhicaryavatara, as that lecture, and it was incredibly profound. It also says that during the teaching and recitation of the 9th chapter of this text, which is the chapter on wisdom, he actually began to float above his cushion. So I'm not going to be floating above my cushion, I think, today, but I do want to share a little bit of what's contained within this teaching, this text. And there's also, there's wisdom in Shantideva's humility. At the beginning of the text, he starts by saying, basically, what I have to say has been said before. I have no particular skill in learning or lecturing, and what I'm about to teach is entirely for my own edification, to develop and further my own understanding. And this isn't a kind of false modesty. It's not a sort of fake humility, but really an acknowledgement of the dangers of arrogance and the importance of humility when engaging with these kinds of teachings and going forward into the application. So I'm going to give you a brief outline of the Bodhicaryavatara. It consists of 10 chapters, each one addressing a different aspect of the path. So the first chapter explores the excellence of bodhicitta, this awakened heart mind, and why this is the foundation of the path. The second chapter focuses on confession and making offerings. So there's an importance of acknowledging our shortcomings, cultivating generosity, being honest, being real, and not coming in with some sense of a heightened sense of self-importance or arrogance. So the third chapter, which is translated something like taking hold, this contains the Bodhisattva vow. This is where the formal commitment to benefit all beings. This is what's drawn from when one takes the Bodhisattva vow. and really kind of is a very important chapter on kind of outlining how to be of service, how to help. Chapters 4 through 8 they systematically address what are called the 6 paramitas or 6 perfections, which is a very, very well-known formulation in Mahayana Buddhism. So these 6 perfections are generosity, ethics, patience, diligence, meditation, and wisdom. So this is what a big chunk of that text goes through each one of those. And then we have the 9th chapter on the perfection of wisdom, and is really considered the philosophical heart of this text and explores the nature of emptiness. And then the final chapter, there's a sort of 10th piece, which is a dedication of merit, extending the benefits of practice to all beings. So that's a basic, short outline of this. Some of you may have a copy of this, The Path of the Bodhisattva. There's a few different translations of this. So it's definitely a very core text to have if you're training in Buddhist chaplaincy. So what makes this text really valuable for Buddhist spiritual care is it's really the blend of philosophical depth, spiritual advice, and practical guidance. So it doesn't just tell us to be compassionate. It is really showing how to cultivate compassion step by step. So I'm going to shift a little bit from this text into another kind of formulation that one often finds in Mahayana Buddhist teachings and the texts on the path of the Bodhisattva. And I think it's really important because it's how to deal with things, how to work on the path, particularly if you're training to be somebody who is essentially becoming a refuge for people who are maybe going through some of the worst experiences of their life. You know, chaplains work in hospitals, they work in busy emergency rooms, they work in prisons, they work in hospices, they are attending to people who are passing away. All sorts of situations. They're working in situations with law enforcement, they're working in situations with emergency, EMTs. There's all sorts of things. So it's developing the resilience and the ground, really. And it's working with fear. And one of the things about working with fear is you really have to understand the nature. To be fearless, you have to really understand the nature of fear itself. And it isn't about not experiencing fear, it's how you work with it. So, funnily enough, there's another text in the Mahayana tradition, which is a full-on manual. It's like, I call it the Bodhisattva manual. It's called the Bodhisattva Bhumi by a Sangha, written by a Sangha. And there's a lot in there. But in many different formulations, there's a formula called the 5 Great Fears, which is something that bodhisattvas get to work with. And I wanted to share some of this because Buddhist caregivers, chaplains, much of their work involves being present with people who are facing profound situations and also profound fear. So in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, it's identified which are called the 5 Great Fears. And they're remarkably relevant, the descriptions of these, especially in the field of chaplaincy. So when we think about, well, what is fear itself? It's a protective reaction of the ego. The ego wants to hold, to have, to not let go, or to push away, depending on what's happening. Fear often arises from our attachment to a fixed sense of self and our resistance to the fundamental reality of impermanence. So I want to go through each of these 5 fears that come from the Buddhist tradition and their relevance to spiritual care. First one, unsurprisingly, is fear of death. This is probably the most obvious fear to encounter in the work of chaplaincy, but this is something that is encountered by everyone. Death represents the ultimate boundary of self and ego. And our nervous systems are wired with a kind of level of vigilance system that's always looking out for existential threats. So it's a normal thing. It's sort of built into our system. It's wired into our system. But it's a big fear. And chaplains are often called to sit with people approaching death, or with families who are tending to a loved one who is passing or has just passed. And so learning to work with this first great fear of death with practice helps chaplains remain present without being overcome by their own fears of mortality. So this is something that is good to work with. Again, thinking about being a spiritual caregiver is that you're actually radiating what people need. So you have to go through these common fears are really important to understand in oneself so that you can be a benefit to others. So the first one was fear of death. The second one is fear of illness. Now, in the Buddha's time, this was formidable fear. Disease was everywhere, but disease has always been everywhere. We have, I'm sitting here recovering possibly from COVID. So this isn't something that is limited to times in the past. So the fear of illness, the fundamental fear of vulnerability, and working with, as a caregiver, working with those who are ill means witnessing their confrontation with impermanence and the limits of control. And so the practice here is being able to hold space for this reality without turning away and just being there with it. So that's the second one. So we had fear of death, fear of illness. Now, the third one is sort of translate to something like fear of losing one's mind. Let's say cognitive decline, maybe dementia, but any kind of cognitive decline. So there's the damage to mental processes and faculties. In the Buddhist tradition, the underlying kind of potentiality awaken is always there and unchanged, but the mental processes and faculties can have some cognitive pieces. So this is the third one. And chaplains are often called to recognize and work with folks who are experiencing a breakdown of certain kinds of mental processes. And so it's an understanding of a different experience of reality, to be able to understand that we're all experiencing reality, perceiving reality in our own particular way, and to recognize the dignity of those, particularly people who have impaired faculties, mental faculties, but also just experiencing a completely different kind of mental processes of reality. And so it's important to see beyond those differences in mental processes to recognize the awareness that remains beneath that. So this is something that is also very important to keep in mind. So that was the third one. The fourth one is loss of livelihood. So this is a fear that involves material security. I mean, even in a early Buddhist context, it was, even monastics who've taken vows of poverty face this fear because they're utterly dependent on the alms of being given what was offered to them. But let's say in a more modern context in our work, certainly in terms of being a caregiver, spiritual caregiver or chaplain, we'll encounter people facing financial insecurity, job loss, and there's an erosion of fixed identities that can accompany these changes. And again, this the difficulty of the impermanence of things. And so helping to navigate the reality of this is temporary, which can be very scary, but also liberating. So that's the fourth. So we had fear of death, fear of illness, fear of cognitive decline, and loss of livelihood. And now the fifth one, which I think is just so perfect, and is a big one for me, which is fear of public speaking. This is, again, I think it's so interesting that this goes back so far, because if you looked at modern lists of what people are afraid of, public speaking and death are definitely one, I think, the top two. So fear of public speaking. But it's like, what does this mean? It's the fear of being seen, of being vulnerable. And so, yeah, sort of being put on the spot, of really being vulnerable. And this is something that is also good to work with, good to cultivate. This has been a big one for me. It took me a long time to be able to do any kind of public speaking, because it completely activated my nervous system. Racing heart, shortness of breath, feeling out of control, or just freezing. All of those things as an experience, a somatic experience in the body, that's really helpful to actually start to develop compassion towards, notice, and work with. So this is something that, as chaplains, we work with. So we train our chaplains to not only help others face their fears, but confront their own. So it's really important to work with all of those things, in that sense of being able to work on oneself so that you can model that for others and show up for others. So, in going back to this text, the Bodhicaryavatara, it's really speaking to cultivating a kind of fearlessness. We aren't afraid to show up for others. We aren't afraid of our own death, illness, loss of, all of those things. We aren't afraid of our own impermanence. We aren't afraid to speak. We develop confidence on the path and genuine presence. We admit our faults. We deal with our own BS. We are going to show up. So that sense of showing up really, I think, captures the essence of chaplaincy. It's about committing to being present, even when it's uncomfortable, and being able to face our own fears so that we can be there for others, so we can be there as the refuge for others. So this is something that is really helpful to cultivate and develop, and you can see this in this text, the Bodhicaryavatara. It's an outline of how to develop the qualities that are so important, not just for chaplaincy, but as practitioners who've decided to walk the path of the Bodhisattva. So then, what are practices? What kinds of practices are really good to begin with or to learn, particularly for the path of Buddhist spiritual care or chaplaincy? Excuse me, I just have to take a little sip. One of the first practices that we teach at Naropa in our chaplaincy program is Metta, loving kindness. There's two really, really relevant practices. One is called Metta, loving kindness, and the other one is called Tonglen. So Metta, or Maitri, is the Sanskrit word for loving kindness. And then Tonglen is a Tibetan word which means sending and taking. And the Tonglen practice is a little bit more advanced. It's more of a Mahayana practice, but the Maitri or Metta practice, loving kindness, is foundational. Now, that does not mean that it's simple or superficial at all. It's an incredibly profound practice. You may be familiar with Sharon Salzberg, who's really one of the best proponents and teachers of Metta practice. She talks about this practice, loving kindness, that it isn't about forcing yourself to love everyone you meet, but it's really about realizing how interconnected all of our lives are. And it helps us cultivate a heart that recognizes shared humanity. Tonglen is a more advanced practice, and it's a kind of short-circuiting. It sort of reverses the usual logic of trying to avoid suffering and seeking pleasure. So in Tonglen practice, a practitioner visualizes taking in the suffering of others with each in-breath and sending out relief. And so it's a direct antidote to the tendency to turn away from suffering. So these two practices, loving kindness practice, Metta, is taught first. And then after a certain amount of development, then Tonglen is taught. And these are very, very key practices in developing one's skill as a chaplain, as a Buddhist chaplain. And so there's the building of the foundational practices and to maybe more complex or more challenging levels of practice. And it's important to honor that progression, both in the development of the chaplain, but then also when sharing those practices to others. So it's really a progressive level of training. So what I would like to do for the next sort of 10 minutes, in the last moments that we have, is to do a little metta practice. I'll guide you through a very simple loving kindness meditation practice. This is a sample of how one would begin developing the actual kind of spiritual training that's involved in being a Buddhist chaplain. And this is adapted mostly from Sharon Salzberg's approach and really is a direct experience about how to start to cultivate compassion and to develop the kind of compassion that is required in terms of becoming a spiritual caregiver. You have to be able to extend that to yourself. You have to learn how to develop compassion for your own experience. So let's begin by doing this. Let's try a little bit. Let's sit comfortably. With this, you can close your eyes or leave them open, whatever helps you feel most at ease. And allow your attention to settle into your body. Take a few deep breaths. And just let yourself be aware of your experience. You're not doing anything particularly different. Let your breath just be natural. If your mind is sort of wandering off here and there, you can just notice it, but you can just come back. No big deal. Just try to sit naturally. One of the things you can do is take the palms of your hands and rest them on your knees. This is known as a mudra of the posture of natural ease. So that's what we want. We just want to sit very naturally, allow our breath to be here. Just allow yourself to be at ease. And with this metta practice, we're going to use the silent repetition of certain phrases. You can use any variation of these phrases that resonates with you. You won't be saying these out loud. You can repeat them silently to yourself. But I will be repeating them. and it's may I or you they be safe, be happy, be healthy, be at ease. And you can create a rhythm that feels pleasing to you, but I'll be repeating them. But the important thing is safe, happy, healthy, at ease. Safe, happy, healthy, at ease. Now, you don't need to force any kind of special feeling. You're just gathering your attention behind a phrase. And if your mind wanders off, just gently bring it back to these phrases. Now, we're going to start, again, sometimes this formulation changes, but I'm going to start with ourselves. So sometimes I find it helpful to just put your hand on your heart and just be able to touch into your own experience. Whatever you're experiencing right now, you know, I'm getting over flu, possibly COVID. So, yeah, my body's kind of really gone through a lot the last week. I'm starting to recover, but I've had to rest a lot, take care, have a slight little kind of headache, body's a little weary. Just aware of what's kind of like, you know, going on with myself and bringing a sense of compassion and loving kindness to my own experience, whether it's mental, physical suffering that I may have experienced, whatever's going on, stress, physical pain, sadness, anger, whatever is happening, just visualize extending some compassion to your own experience. Just gently, simply, may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be healthy, and may I be at ease. And you can actually kind of just start to get a sense of a little bit of compassion. Rather than beating yourself up about the suffering, show some compassion towards your experience. Life's hard, it's stressful, you've had to deal with a lot, you're dealing with a lot. May I be safe, may I be happy, may I be healthy, and may I be at ease. And now you can bring to mind someone who is really a loved one, a being in your life that you really love dearly. You know, it could be a family member, a spouse, a partner, a pet, but just a being who you love very much. And you can even think about what they might be doing right now, where they are in the world, what they're up to, and just bring them to your mind and extend loving kindness and compassion towards them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at ease. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at ease. And then you're going to bring to mind a neutral sort of being, someone that you, maybe an acquaintance, maybe someone that you see on your daily commute to work, or someone that you have a professional connection with, not someone that you know very well, but just a kind of neutral being that you might not know really personally, but you've had some sort of interactions with. And you can extend loving kindness, compassion towards that being, the neutral being, the acquaintance. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at ease. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you be at ease. You can just start to feel that sense of loving kindness, compassion, interconnectedness, extending out to that neutral person. And then you're going to bring to mind a being that you have difficulty with. It's probably not the moment to bring up the person that you might have a real extreme problem with, but just some sort of discord or difficulty, or someone you find kind of problematic, the sort of difficult being. Maybe someone at work that really annoys you, or someone you had a bit of an argument with, or something like that. Wouldn't recommend a really big thing right now, but maybe just something that's sort of difficult. And bring them to mind and imagine what they're doing. You could do that. But bring them to mind and imagine extending loving kindness and compassion towards that being. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. May you be safe. May you be happy, healthy, and may you be at ease. And now we're going to start to extend this outward. We're going to expand. So you can feel it really. The heart center is a really nice place to kind of to feel, let's say, an experience of that loving kindness, the sort of openness, compassion. You might even feel the expansion in your body and your chest and your heart. And you can start to extend it out to anyone or any being that's nearby, in your house, in your apartment, wherever you are right now. Maybe you're at work, maybe you're, who knows, I don't know where we all are, but wherever you are, there are other beings around you. There are other human beings, there's all kinds of beings from other realms, there's animal beings, insect beings, there's all sorts of creatures in your vicinity. So offer loving kindness to that collective. May you all be safe. May you all be happy, healthy, and may you live with ease. And you can expand this out. Expand it out beyond whatever place that you're in right now, whatever structure or building you're sitting in. Every being in that building, and then all the beings just outside that building, on the street, walking by, in the cars, driving by. Extend loving kindness to all beings, expanding out, expanding that loving kindness out. Excuse me. May you all be safe, happy, healthy, and live with ease. And you can just keep going. Extend it out to all the beings in your town. Everyone going about their day, their Sunday or their Monday or their Saturday, depending on where you are in the world. May you all be safe, happy, healthy, and at ease. And you can just keep extending this loving kindness out to all beings everywhere, beyond the town you're in, into the state or the county that you're in, into the country that you're in. May you all be safe, happy, healthy, and live with ease. And really just expand it out, as if, and imagine if we were looking down from space, your heart would be a little light shining out across the planet, extending your loving kindness to all beings, all people, all creatures, all those in existence, near and far, known and unknown. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. And may all beings live with ease. And when you feel ready, you can slowly open your eyes if they've been closed. Or just bring your awareness back. So this practice, it gives us a direct experience of what the Bodhicaryavatara is pointing to, the cultivation of an open heart that really taps into and recognizes our interconnection. And this is really the beginning of the practical training that is employed for chaplaincy training, Buddhist chaplaincy training. So it really is about the cultivation of specific things that are contained within this tradition. The deepening of wisdom is incredibly important. As we conclude this short exploration of the Bodhicaryavatara as a guide for Buddhist chaplaincy or Buddhist spiritual care, I want to highlight what I find sort of aspiring and aspirational about this approach is the image of a bodhisattva as a bridge, as a lamp, as a support. This is from the text. May I be a bridge, may I be a lamp. And it reminds us that really effective chaplaincy or spiritual care requires compassion and wisdom, because we need the heart that responds to suffering and the wisdom that can see beyond conventional distinctions. So we need practices that cultivate those qualities and train in those as grounding for the work. And it's a reminder that showing up for others isn't just about what we do, but who we are becoming in the process as well. So each time, each interaction, each moment of presence with someone who's suffering is both service and practice. So for chaplains, certainly from the perspective of the Buddhist tradition, to approach that work knowing that one's own journey of awakening is inseparable from one's service is incredibly important. And I want to finish with some words adapted from the 10th chapter of this text, the Bodhicaryavatara. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. So we have a little bit of time. I think I can answer a couple of questions, and then we'll dedicate the merit. But I think there'll be an announcement about this, but I will be also hosting a Q&A on Buddhist chaplaincy and spiritual care in about 10 days or sometime in April. I don't have the dates, but I think the announcers will probably have it. And we're actually launching a sampler, an introduction course in June on Buddhist spiritual care. So this was a way of giving you a sense of what that training looks like. So thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry about my coughing and croakiness and sniffing. And I'll see, I'm assuming that the questions will come in maybe in the chat. I see one here. So I could probably just answer one or two questions and then we'll go to dedicating the merit. How to answer people's philosophical or existential concerns as a chaplain, i.e. what happens when we die or how to die? Big question. Certainly something that comes up in the training of chaplaincy. And again, it's all about context. It's who's asking the question, where are you? If you're working in a hospital and you're working with somebody who is Christian, or you're working with someone who's Jewish, or it isn't just, if it depends on where you're doing your chaplaincy. There's answers that can come from the Buddhist tradition if you're talking to a Buddhist, but there's obviously differences depending on who's asking. So the short answer to that, Max, is it depends. But one of the things that chaplains train in is how to skillfully be there for people in moments when they have those kinds of questions. Okay. The June retreat. So the June retreat is, it's June, I believe it's June 5th to the 10th. And it will go through all of the main areas. It will basically provide an introduction to all of the main areas of spiritual care training, which is philosophical, grounded in philosophical, theological kind of teachings, pastoral care, very particular kinds of training to do with end-of-life care, but also ritual, learning how to do how to perform rituals, and also developing one's own resilience and spiritual practice, self-care, resilience, self-care and boundary setting. So there's a lot of different things, and I'll be leading some of the sessions, but there's also going to be some really amazing guest speakers and practitioners who are also going to come and give lectures and insights. So this is really designed to give somebody a real grounding and an introduction to what all of the components of chaplaincy or spiritual care training and end-of-life care is all about. And there's an intention to develop an entire program at Mandala in chaplaincy, Buddhist chaplaincy. So this is a kind of an introduction to give people a sense of what does that training look like, and really explore it. A sort of, let's say, try before you buy experience with the intention that there will be a full training program developed at Mandala. So I would like to, right now, we can dedicate the merit, and then I'll turn it over to our hosts, who I think will have a few announcements. So if you could bring up, thank you. So this is incredibly important. You know, the Bodhicaryavatara has an entire chapter dedicated to dedication. So in this way, we're sharing out whatever benefit, whatever merit, anything helpful, useful, anything that can provide a little bit of ease. All of that from whatever we have done in this hour we've had together. May that be of benefit to all beings. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. So thank you so much for listening and for inviting me to talk about this training, which is so important in the times that we're living in now, to be able to do this and to have these teachings and be able to apply them. Incredibly beneficial. So thanks very much, and please do show up for the Q&A and join us in the retreat if you have interest.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. On behalf of all of us, thank you for sharing your deep learning and wisdom, a really beautiful metta meditation as well. Thank you for helping us to open our hearts a little more today and for offering inspiration on the path. So from all of us, thank you. And thank you at home for your participation and support. If you would like to join Dr. Hall on April 9th for a Buddhist spiritual care Q&A session on Jnana, our digital Dharma hub, you can find the details via the link in the chat now. If you would like to go deeper on this subject, consider joining us for a 5-day immersive introduction to Buddhist spiritual care on June 5th to 10th. Designed for those interested in exploring spiritual care through a Buddhist lens, and serving as a curriculum sampler of a 3-year contemplative chaplaincy program. The retreat is also for those navigating dying, illness, caregiving in all forms, and the myriad of life transitions. The link is in the chat now. And you can join us in discovering the legacy of Buddhism's pioneering women with acclaimed scholar Wendy Garling in an illuminating 2-day journey. Experience her historic pilgrimage slideshow presentation In the Footsteps of Gautami on April 4th, followed by Women in the Life of Buddha on April 5th, revealing the powerful feminine presence obscured for centuries, yet vital to understanding Buddhism's true origins. And last but not least, what are you doing this summer? Imagine yourself at our breathtaking retreat center, where the sacred mountains meet your spiritual journey. Our Living Dharma Practitioner Program is open to applications now and offers the opportunity to immerse in authentic Vajrayana practice while serving a vibrant Buddhist community that will transform your path forever. Follow the link in the chat for more details and to apply. You can see all upcoming events on the Tara Mandala calendar page. And follow Tara Mandala on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to stay up to date with our news and our mailing list to get updates straight to your inbox. Past episodes of Lama Live are stored on YouTube, where you can revisit them at any time. Now, following the tradition going all the way back to the time of the Buddha, 2600 years ago, you have the opportunity to make an offering of dana to Dr. Hall. Dana is a Pali and Sanskrit word that means generosity. Offering dana creates an auspicious connection and is a beautiful expression of the interdependence between teacher and student. Dana directly recognizes the precious gift of the teacher and the teachings, without which one could not practice the Dharma. To offer dana, please follow the link in the chat now. And now, all that remains is for me to wish you farewell, and we hope to see you at the next Lama Live at the same time on April 13th. Goodbye.
Tare tu re Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha Om Tare tu re Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha Om Tare tu re Mangalam Shri Mahapani Swaha Om Tare tu